This security guard stole $18 million from the Dunbar Armored facility, which holds the most money in America. The story starts off with a man named Alan Pace. Alan Pace works at the Dunbar Armored facility in Los Angeles. He works as a regional safety inspector, which means that he is very familiar with the security systems in the facility. Alan is an outgoing person. He likes to prank people, and he also tells a lot of jokes to his coworkers. He would be like, "What do you call a broke employed person? Jessica." And poor Jessica would be like, "That's not funny." He also has a girlfriend who is also a coworker of his. Her job is to manage video security equipment. However, she gets fired because she is suspected of theft, and some of Alan's friends who works there also get fired. It is suspected that this may have built a bit of tension between Alan and the management of the facility. But then, Alan gets an idea, and he plans to rob the facility. On top of that, the facility houses over $18 million. So yeah, he is going to be very rich if he somehow pulls this off. However, Alan cannot do this heist alone, so he contacts his good childhood friend, Eugene Lamar Hill Jr., and he asks him, "Hey, I need your help to pull off a heist," and Eugene says, "Yes." However, Eugene Hill will actually become the reason why the squad gets caught, because he will actually make a stupid mistake after the heist, but we're not at that part of the story yet. Alan Pace realizes that the two of them cannot pull this heist off by themselves, so Alan invites 3 other childhood friends of his. Soon enough, they meet up at one of their houses and they start planning the heist. They carefully match their movements so that whenever the camera moves right, they move left, and vice versa. They also made sure to time the heist perfectly, so that most of the staff will be on lunch break when they perform the heist. However, a few weeks later, something goes wrong, because Alan gets fired for tampering with the facility's vehicles. But this does not stop them from executing the heist. Alan still has the key to the Dunbar Armored facility, so that same day, he contacts his boys, and he lets them know what had happened, and he tells them, "We are doing this heist tomorrow." So, the following day, the 5 guys attend a party at around midnight. They basically did this so that they could have alibis. But then, they quietly snuck out of the party, one by one, so that they could quickly do the heist, and pretend as if they never left the party. After each member snuck out of the party, the crew regrouped nearby. They put on their disguises and took their equipment and got into a U-Haul truck. They drove the U-Haul truck to the Dunbar Armored facility, and they parked the truck in a loading area near the entrance. They got out of the truck, they rushed into the building, making sure to avoid the cameras just as they had practiced. Then they got into the guard room. They quickly overpowered the guard, tied him up, and they took the vault keys. Then, they made their way to the lunchroom. Then they overpowered everyone there and tied all of them up with duct tape so that they don't ring the alarm or call the cops. They eventually made their way to the safe. They opened it with the key they had just obtained. Then they took as much money as they could, loaded it up into duffel bags, and dumped it all into the truck. Afterwards, the crew took the videotapes for the security cameras. The crew left the facility in the truck. They went to Eugene's apartment. They removed their disguises and stashed all their equipment in his house. Then they went back to the party and made it seem like they had never left. Back at the Dunbar Armored facility, the employees notified the FBI and police. They rushed to the facility and they began an investigation. But the thing is, they were barely able to find any evidence. However, they were able to find a broken taillight lens that matches a U-Haul truck. It turns out as they were reversing into the loading area, they accidentally crashed into the wall and a piece of the taillight came off. But this wasn't enough evidence to convict anyone. Over the next few days, All the employees at the Dunbar Armored facility had to take a lie detector test, including everyone that recently got fired. Alan and his girlfriend failed the lie detector test. However, this still isn't enough to prove anything. A few months later, the FBI put up a cash reward of $70,000 for any information regarding the heist, but this also wasn't enough to find the suspects, so it seems like they were not going to get caught. However, they started getting too comfortable. Because, 2 years after the heist, Eugene Lamar actually tries to invest into some land, but he uses the same money that they had stolen, and it had the original cash strips still attached to the money. The real estate agent sees these cash strips and phones the police. The cash strips were basically used to identify where the money came from, and it matched the cash strips from the Dunbar Armored facility. So then, Eugene Lamar was arrested. He gets interviewed by the police, and Eugene immediately snitches on his fellow crew members. The rest of the crew gets arrested, they were put on trial, and they were all found guilty and sentenced to prison. Alan Pace received a 24-year sentence. One of his friends, Eric, received a 17-year sentence, and the rest received a sentence of about 8 to 10 years. This is what Alan Pace looks like, and this is what the other thieves look like. Even though they have been arrested, most of them should be out of prison by now. However, it's worth noting that the police only managed to recover $5 million from the $18.9 million that was stolen, leaving about $13 million unaccounted for.